Hi, I'm Sophia at the Wonky Bobbin, and I'm going to show you how to make a tote bag with French seams today. So first of all, grab everything you need. You'll need some fabric, some thread. I've gone with a bright blue to match my fabric here, a rotary cutter or some scissors, depending on what you prefer to use. You'll also need some pins, a quilting ruler, and a couple of turning out tools that aren't compulsory. You can use whatever fabric you want for this project. I've gone with a woven gorgeous Liberty quilting cotton because I just love sewing with Liberty. You can cut it whatever size you want. I used the width of my bolt of fabric as a guide, and then I just measured 20 inches down. You don't have to do this. A good guide, if you're using maybe dressmaker's fabric, which is a bit wider, is 24 inches folded. But honestly, cut it whatever size you want. Cut it on the fold so that you cut both pieces the same size. Now chop off your selvage, which is down here, the edge of the fabric. Now you can cut the fabric in two here if you want to have two seams on either side of the bag, but I kept the fold in my fabric, which made it a slightly quicker make. I quite like only having the one seam. My strap here is 3 inches by 19 inches and I cut two of them. Again, I cut it on the fold just to be nice and quick. But you can cut that, or you'll need to cut that so that you have two separate straps. If you decide to change the length of them, you can make them as long as you want, but make them at least 3 inches wide so then it's easier to turn it out later. We're going to start by sewing up the side seams down here. In this video I'm going to show you how to do French seams, but you can just do normal seams if you want to. I just like a lovely finished edge inside the bag, and it adds to the strength of the bag, makes it nice and strong. Okay, first you're going to lay your fabric together wrong sides facing, and you're going to pin all the way along that side. Obviously if you cut your fabric in half, you'll need to pin both sides. When you've pinned it, you're going to sew down that side with quite a small seam allowance, about 1/4 of an inch. I used this little notch as a guide. It's good to find a little landmark on your presser foot to help guide your seam. Now you're going to drape the tube. Now you've sewn it up, you're going to drape the tube around the ironing board and press the seam over to the side so it's nice and neat. Take it off and turn the tube inside out, and then you're going to press the whole thing together again so it's nice and flat. Now pin this side again, and this time you're going to sew down the side you've already sewn up once with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I like to use 3/8 of an inch because on my machine that's basically the edge of the presser foot, but as long as it's bigger than the previous seam, you can do it whatever size you want. Turn your fabric the right way out again, pop it back over the ironing board and press along the seam, and you should now have a really lovely seam with a concealed raw edge. So you've got no raw edges showing in this project. If you decided to cut out your large piece of fabric into two, repeat this on the other side now. Now repeat the whole process on the bottom edge of your fabric. Don't worry too much about the corners lying perfectly flat, you're going to be chopping them off in a moment anyway. Now we're going to box out the corners, so make sure your bag is the right way out, and then grab one corner of your tote bag and open it up like a bag of crisps, sort of pull it apart and flatten it out, making sure that the seams match down the top and the bottom. Now measure down 3 inches from the point and draw a line across the fabric with a fabric marker. I've just used like a chalk pencil here. It doesn't have to be 3 inches, it can be however deep you want the tote to be, so just decide on the width and then draw a line that far down. It doesn't have to be 3 inches. Pin it in place and then stitch down the line here. Now using your rotary cutter or your scissors and a quilting ruler, you're going to cut off the corner about 1/4 of an inch from the seam line. It doesn't have to be exact, again just make sure that this seam is smaller than the next one that you're going to sew. Now continue the process exactly as you did before, so turn it inside out and this time right side's facing. You're going to sew along this edge, give it a nice press first, sew along that edge about 3/8 of an inch and that'll enclose the previous seam. Then turn it out and you can see you've got a really lovely enclosed seam in a boxed out corner there. So it'll make that corner nice and strong. Now you're going to repeat it on the other corner, just the same as you did before. Now we're going to make the straps and I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing this and you can choose which way you prefer. So the first way, we're going to fold the strap lengthways and press it. And then we're going to pin and stitch all the way down the open side using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And there it is. If you want to trim this seam allowance, you can do, completely up to you. Now I'm going to show you 3 ways to turn it out, one with a loop turner, a chopstick or a bodkin. If you want to use a chopstick, just open up the end of the tube, pop the chopstick in and sort of push it into the side a little bit. And then you're just going to pull the fabric tube over the edge of the chopstick. This is a pretty easy way and everyone has a chopstick lying around, but it's not my favourite way. You could also use a bodkin. They're again really cheap off Amazon. Slide it in upside down into the top of the tube and push the fabric into it, and then you sort of slide the little ring up and it closes the teeth around it. Around the fabric, and then just like with the chopstick, you sort of slide it through, slide it around. That's a good way. It does damage the top of the fabric a little bit sometimes though. Another way you can do it is using the loop turner. Again, these are super cheap. You often get them in a pack with the bodkins. It's got a little hook on the end and you slide the tube all the way down to the bottom of the loop turner and hook the hook over the edge of the fabric, and with a tube this wide it's dead quick and easy, and while it's hooked on you just slide it over and pull it through. It takes a bit of practice, but once you've got the hang of it, it's really quick and easy to do. Then give it a good press. Make sure you get it as flat as you can. Here we go. And then if you want to, you can edge stitch down both sides. This next method doesn't require any of these tools and also gives a really lovely finish, but it can take a little bit longer. So on the ironing board, fold the top and the bottom of the long edge of the fabric down by 3/8 of an inch. There's a couple of ways you can do this. I usually just do a little fold. It doesn't have to be super precise. Do a little fold, measure it with my seam gauge, and then just sort of eyeball it all the way along. Keep checking every now and then to check that it's still 3/8 of an inch. Another tool you can use, but you don't have to, is this. This is a Clover hot hammer. It's sort of a felt fabric. Measure where 3/8 of an inch is on there. It's about 1 centimetre. Fold it down over the edge and give it a press, and that gives you a really lovely straight, even fold on it. And now do the bottom. So do exactly the same along this edge. And now you're going to fold the whole length in half and then pin and stitch down the open side. I would suggest, because you're going to stitch down this side with sort of a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance maybe, I would suggest doing it on the opposite side as well, even though it's just decorative, just so it matches and looks really nice. Now you've got your 2 straps all finished. You can just pop them to one side for now, so don't need them just now. Okay, now we're going to finish the top of the bag. We're going to fold it down a small amount and then a slightly larger amount, pop the straps in, and then we'll be done. Okay, so I'm using my seam gauge again to measure approximately 3/8 of an inch, but honestly, do it however much you want. It only needs to be small, it's just to make sure that we don't have any raw edges showing. So I'm going to press that all the way around. You could use a hot hammer here as well if you'd rather. I find this is much quicker. And then this second part I have folded over about an inch. You can make it as deep as you want. Sometimes a nice deep hem looks really lovely, but I'm using the seam gauge to measure an inch, and again I'll press it all the way around. We are almost there. So now what you're going to do is you're going to open out the fold you've just made and you're going to tuck your straps in. So measure around 7 inches. I think I did 6.5, and that will become the marking for the outside edge of the strap. Do it from both sides. It can be any distance you want, wherever you feel comfortable doing it. Just make sure it's equal on both sides. And then get your strap and tuck it in under the second fold. Make sure it's nice and clean against that edge, and then you're going to pin it. And then repeat this for the rest of the straps, just making sure that your straps don't twist as you do it. Now pin all the way around the rest of the top of the bag and sew about 1/4 of an inch from the inside folded edge here. Here it is all stitched around the top, close to that edge as possible, nice and neat. Now without the following step, the bag kind of pulls apart a little bit and looks a bit strange. So what we're going to do is fix those straps in place so they're pointing up. I'll show you on the inside of the bag so you can see a little bit better. But you're going to fold these straps up so they're perfectly aligned with the part of the strap underneath. Give them a nice press. And then you're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch from the top of the very top of the bag all the way along here from the outside of one edge of the strap to the outside of the other one. And here you can see on the other side how that's stitched down. Repeat on the other strap and you're done. You've got a gorgeous tote bag. Well done.